Hello, APUSH Nation, and welcome to the Underground Bunker, and welcome to the APUSH Underground. This is our latest edition of Content Spotlight, and what Content Spotlight is where we take and highlight a specific topic in one of our units and explain its importance and identify its broader historical connections and implications. Today I will be discussing one of the largest, if not the largest, land acquisitions in our nation's history, and that is the Louisiana Purchase. So let's start with, yes, folks, you guessed it, we are starting with some context. So let's begin. At the turn of the 19th century, America, now the cradle for democracy, has stayed neutral in the embroiled French Revolution of the 1790s. The new nation once again saw Britain and France at war and saw the new French leader in Napoleon Bonaparte take the helm. While the United States was cushioned from European conflict by 3,000 miles of ocean, the fear of European conflict spilling over into North America, as it was during the French and Indian War, seemed likely once again. In 1800, France secretly reacquired the Louisiana Territory from Spain in hopes to use the vast trans-Mississippi region as an area to grow food to resupply its troops, of roughly 30,000 in their plight to reacquire their lost colony of Haiti. Jefferson, who was president at the time, the third president, his concerns did not lie in France trying to reacquire the colony of Haiti, but moreover trying to reestablish a presence in the Louisiana Territory. Before France formally took control of the region, the Spanish, who were the previous owners, closed the port of New Orleans and backed up American commerce in the interior. That's right, we're having issues in the interior again, folks. By doing so, the farmers in the region ran into logistical and infrastructure issues in getting their crops to market. Furthermore, this was a disaster to Jefferson, who was the voice of agrarian America and felt that democracy was in the hands of the independent farmer. With the commerce of the Mississippi backing up from New Orleans north to Cincinnati, and the threat of the French power reestablishing itself on the North American continent, Jefferson sent fellow Virginian and close political ally James Monroe, who would later become the 7th President of the United States, to meet with Robert Livingston, who was already in Paris. When Monroe arrived in the spring of 1803, what he learned was absolutely shocking. As a result of the slave uprising in Haiti and an imminent war with the British, Napoleon wanted to concentrate all of his efforts in Europe and abandon any ambition to reestablish a North American footing. It should also be noted that Minister Talleyrand, who we know from the XYZ affair, was also wanting to reestablish this footing in North America and plant the French flag in New Orleans and retake that Louisiana territory. So what Napoleon was willing to do was sell the entire tract of the Louisiana Territory to the Americans, including the most sought-after section of it, the Port of New Orleans. Seizing on what Jefferson later called a fugitive occurrence, Monroe and Livingston immediately entered into negotiations and on April 30th reached an agreement that actually exceeded their authority. Monroe had more authority than Livingston. He was vested with some presidential authority as this envoy was in Paris during this time period because there's no means of communication and swift communication. The purchase of the Louisiana Territory, including New Orleans, for $15 million. The acquisition of approximately 827,000 square miles would double the size of the United States, which Jefferson would eventually send Lewis and Clark in the famous expedition to map and scout the territory. Sounds great, but wait, there's also going to be a concession with this purchase. The controversy. This is still the early part of the Republic, and the role of the federal government and the construction of the Constitution is still a pivotal question on the minds of both the government and the people. Dating back to the Hamilton debates over the Bank of the United States, Jefferson had a strict construction of the Constitution. But nowhere in the Constitution did it give the president power to purchase land. Jefferson at first thought of trying to write and pass a constitutional amendment to give him power, but by the time it was ratified by Congress in the states, Napoleon could have changed his mind. He needed to act in earnest, but still he was willing to abandon his constitutional principles and adopt a more federalist construction of the Constitution. But why was he willing to do this? Why was he willing to go against his principles? Well, he felt that by having the territory and expanding the United States, the territory would expand farming and in turn expand the ideology or the independent farmer, what he felt was the cradle of democracy. In addition, Jefferson explained in a letter to John Breckinridge in August of 1803 that by securing, and I'm paraphrasing, the Mississippi was in other words a national security issue not only from Spain, but moreover against the more powerful French. Guess he didn't trust the French after all. Harumph. Also, Jefferson noted that the lands west of the Mississippi could be used almost as like a safe haven, a safety valve of sorts for American Indians as white settlers pushed into the eastern banks of the Mississippi, and these settlers could relocate Native Americans to the western portion of the Mississippi River. What Jefferson would do would be end up using the power of creating treaties to push the purchase through the Senate, and October 20th, 1803, the Senate ratified the treaty, although there were 7 senators who voted it down. Guess what? Yes, you guessed it, folks. They were all Federalists. You gotta love politics. Well, the size of the federal government is now going to be larger. Jefferson not only doubled the size of the nation geographically, but he also increased the size of the government. Another deviation of his principles. This should be of no surprise due to the fact that the Northwest Ordinance of 1785 already put the federal government in charge of organizing new territories under the Articles of Confederation. Again, we see a continuity that will forever be connected with our system of government, and that is the debate over the power of the federal government. So what do we see here overall? The purchase of the Louisiana Territory is a continuation of the same debate that was in Washington's cabinet over Hamilton's economic plan. While Jefferson may have deviated from his views of small government and a strict construction to support the growing republic, this debate over federal power and authority will not end when the treaty is ratified. Once the region becomes occupied with more settlers wanting to expand their ideas of economy and culture into the region, we will see the Louisiana Territory by 1821 with the Missouri Compromise become the eyes of the nation over the debate over slavery and whether or not the federal government has the power to limit slavery to the southern sections of the territory or would it go freely throughout. These questions over federal authority will ultimately lead to civil war. So this territory is going to become basically ground zero for the Civil War and the ideologies of westward expansion. So what Jefferson does here by purchasing Louisiana Territory, he's going to open up a vast region that's going to initially double the size of the nation. He's going to have a vast number of resources in this region. He's going to open up this territory for settlers to open up into new farming territories and new industrial centers. We're going to see Chicago become an industrial center later on as the 19th century progresses. But it's also going to open up a lot of controversy. It's going to open up controversy with the federal government and the state government, whether or not the power of the feds or the power of the states has the right to over the question of slavery. We're also going to see whether or not the people that are already living there's roughly 100,000 people living there, not including Native American groups that are living in the region already, and whether or not they are going to become citizens of this nation. So we see a lot of these historical themes running in throughout this content spotlight of the Louisiana Purchase. So I hope you enjoyed this content spotlight. Make sure you touch back with us with our unit reviews, our highlights on writing skills, our content spotlights, and of course our APUSH on the road. This is Mr. Zagari from the Underground Bunker. Be well, be safe. We'll see you soon.